We had some technical difficulties last time, but hopefully everything will work out now. So, uh, if you are new or just found this channel by mistake, this is the channel of the D Clinic Studios, which is a residency program in the western part of Hungary. And this year we have tried a new thing, an online residency, and we already had a very nice talk with Emily BUDD, our online resident. And this is basically the next step in this online residency. We're gonna check back with Emily to see how she's been doing and to see get a bit of background information about her stuff in the blog that she was writing, and what are her plans for the rest of the residency and the exhibition that will end this period. So let me just get Emily here. Hi, Emily. If anyone is in the chat, can you tell us if the voices are good?
Happy to be here.
Happy to hear you if we manage to do that. Sorry about this, but last time we had a bit of technical problems, so I'm just trying to make sure. Okay. Maybe I should just check on self. In the meantime, how are you, Emily? How was your day, basically? Let's start with that.
Good. The day here is still young. It's only 11 o'clock in the Western US. It's a beautiful day. This time of year is really beautiful. It's nice and cool, but still sunny. Yeah, I'm looking forward to another studio day today.
Very nice. Sorry, I'm just still waiting for feedback.
No worries. It's good to check.
Very good. I'm hearing that we have voice, we have picture, everything, so we can go on. So, we were not sure how to do this online residency, but I think we managed to find some kind of way to make it work. With you writing a blog about your experiences and your process, and also I believe you had some nice conversations with our resident artists who were in place here in Zalaegerszeg. Can you tell us a bit about those conversations? How did you like it? Did you feel like at least a bit of like you're here with us, or you joined a bit of our artist community here?
Yeah. Of course, it kind of made me even more sad that I couldn't be there in person. But it was, yeah, really cool to learn from Ian and Rob, right? Yeah, sorry. Yeah, about how the area influenced their work, how they use the space, um, working with y'all, and it kind of yeah, it was nice.
I understand. And hopefully, like when the circumstances change, you're feel free to visit us here and check
I would
out
love that.
the circumstances. And I think I would love
Yeah.
to visit Nevada also. Like it look from the pictures, it looks a stunning, looks like a stunning place and a very interesting place to visit. So
Yeah, there's a lot to look at here.
I think so. What I thought is we would check basically your blog entries, and I would, we can tell us a bit about each of these entries, and maybe we will have some questions, so we would see a bit more what went behind these pictures and these entries. Let me
Sure.
pull it up. Okay, I'm still trying to find a way of all the technical stuff, but I
Mhm.
think it's so. This
Great.
was very interesting for me. So basically, can you tell us what we are seeing here in this picture?
Yes, I'm glad that it interests you because I feel like I was really inspired by this.
Hmm.
It's kind of something that had been like floating around the studio for a while that I hadn't really actually documented or looked at individually. But I've been collecting a lot of single use plastics, particularly like wrapping, packaging that you get that usually is just, well, hopefully recycled, but discarded after it's used. And I've been collecting these and then actually using them as like vessels to pour the wax into and kind of let the that space that's inside of them be filled with the wax. This is all done in a brown wax, which I then actually use some of these portions that I did in the brown wax in some lost wax castings that are still in progress. But I still want to do a larger series of these, actually, kind of like an archive. But I'm going to use beeswax instead because I think beeswax is a more interesting material for like
Hmm.
a final material for this
So that would
project.
have a lighter color and maybe a bit more see-through-ish, or it's
It's
just when
it's
it's
kind of
really thin.
it's very fleshy, but it's yellow and it smells really nice. It
Hmm.
smells
Hmm.
like honeybees. And but yeah, like the idea of like a hive filling a space. I kind of like
Hmm.
that relationship to that. And I use a lot of beeswax in building some of my lost wax sculptures as well, because of its history with the lost wax process. Like that was more than likely like the first wax that was used in the lost wax process
Hmm.
in ancient times. So kind of like bridging this gap between like that ancient idea and like something very new, like this idea of plastic garbage.
Hmm.
And you can even see like even a lot of the items that were cast, like for example, the toothbrushes or little bottles of paint, an egg carton, water bottles. Yeah, like a lot of those items themselves are single use. Um, and so, yeah, so since the plastic is like actually quite durable and we know, it lasts a long time, it accumulates, I wanted to kind of explore that as a way of, kind of calling
Hmm.
attention to the long lasting quality of it. It's a little studio shot. Yeah, you can see in the background
Yeah.
the all the plastics that I've been using and keeping.
So yeah, it's really interesting to me because you realize that these plastic containers basically are now shaped like the things that they contain,
Mhm.
so you can actually see the scissors and all the stuff that it contains. So it's not just a plastic box, it's basically form fitted, so it's like the the ghost of the the object that it contained, and it's really nicely you can see them with these molds. Do you also do you also plan to make some casting with these, or is just the wax molds?
It's a little both actually. So with the beeswax, I do want to explore using the beeswax as a final material. But with these, actually, a lot of them have it's kind of when I sculpt with the wax, a lot of it gets kind of edited out, depending on what works for each individual piece. But yes, a lot of these have kind of made it into some of the sculptures that I have in metal right now that I'm finishing for the exhibition. So
Mhm.
there'll be some taste of that in there.
That's also a very nice, like it's basically it's almost like you have like these stations on the way of how the life of an object, like first scissors, and then the plastic, the mold, the cast. It's almost would be interesting to see them side by side,
Hmm.
how it changes. Yeah, I really like these, and some of these have almost like um, a life like quality, like some kind of animal shells, or I don't know, some something that you would find. How do you call that? Fossils, like
Hmm. Yeah,
sometimes.
I use a lot of references to fossilization
Hmm.
actually in my work because of the casting process, just
Hmm.
kind of being, this process of change and immortalization. And yeah, I really like that reference to shells too, because they really are like a plastic shell that
Yeah,
sort of
yeah. The,
mirrors the shape of the object, but isn't the object or the life inside, but
the,
lasts longer than the thing inside.
yeah, so these like little seashells, almost like a vertebrae or something. So it has this, or a skull of an animal. Yeah. So
Mhm.
these are the things that I associated with the first time I saw them. So it's really nice.
Great. Yeah, I love hearing that. Some of them I've actually even manipulated a little further because when it's in wax technically being a liquid, even though it's
Hmm.
can solidify, and kind of folding them and manipulating them into like being more
Hmm.
wrinkled or more evocative of movement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So and I think I read that you also would love to continue with experimenting with this. So it's an
Oh yeah.
ongoing project.
Yeah. Even though it just means more and more garbage is accumulating in my studio. But yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, the more I've been working with it, the more I've kind of lean towards like certain objects that I like, versus others, especially with the water bottles. I'm kind of experimenting with those as
Hmm.
forms and yeah, just kind of like some work for certain things, others work better for other things. And
Yeah. And unfortunately, you will have an endless supply of garbage that you can find. And talking of garbage,
yeah, good segue.
the next post was about a cleaning day, garbage pickup day, something. But I think we have some bigger pictures also that I will show here. So
Mhm.
and we can see the desert as well. So what can
Yeah.
you tell us about this day?
Yeah, well, first of all, this is Lake Mead, which is
Hmm.
the lake formed by the Hoover Dam, which was built in the 20s, I believe. Yeah, late 20s, early 30s, in the Colorado River. And the Colorado River is also the river that formed the Grand Canyon. So it's kind of close to that, relatively. But it's also a national park, or it's in the National Park Service. Um, and a lot of people use it for camping, fishing, boating, even scuba diving, because there are like old towns that were submerged under the water. But unfortunately, every time we go out there, we just find so much garbage. And earlier this year, actually, we started doing garbage pickups there. It started with a larger, more organized cleanup that we volunteered in. Um, and yeah, that's a close up of the ground, and you can see
Hmm.
because the water has been receding. That's like another whole fascinating side, or fact about Lake Mead that's really interesting. But due to climate change, the water level has sunk to like 30%, 30 something percent. So there
That's a
a
lot.
yeah, a lot of the land around the lake, like that area that just showed me, used to be submerged in water. So like you can always tell what used to be submerged in water because there are shells all over the ground.
Hmm.
So while we're picking up trash, it's kind of interesting because some of it you can tell is kind of new, like it's just kind of blown away and got stuck in some sagebrush or something. But some of it's actually kind of buried with the shells, and you can tell probably fell off a boat a few decades ago, and now it's resubmerged again. Um,
Interesting.
yeah, so yeah, we have kind of been, my partner and I have kind of been organizing just little trips just here and there
Mhm.
in areas where we like to go, and just taking a garbage bag, and even in just an hour, we can fill a couple of them. And it's mostly plastic.
Mhm.
There's a lot of broken glass there, but we kind of focus on the plastic because in the sun, it disintegrates very quickly. Um, and is a lot more egregious, like in the fact that it becomes microplastics that end up in the water. And that lake, by the way, is one of the largest reservoirs of water in the entire Southwest. So it is drinking water. Um, and yeah, so we went there with some garbage bags and just started cleaning up around the rim. I did save a lot of stuff that I was interested in using, and I still plan to use.
Yeah, so
um,
it's a double purpose, like cleaning up and also finding some some things that you can use. I was thinking about like this place looks so remote, and still there's garbage everywhere. So one would think that if you're so far outside of civilization in the desert, there's not much garbage, but I suppose it's not the case.
yeah, it's surprisingly close to Las Vegas too, kind of
Mm.
on the eastern side. That is something that was partially buried, and I'm assuming fell off a boat. I don't
Mhm.
know how new that packaging is, I actually never checked, but it just kinda seemed to sum up the fact that, like, there's garbage from things that
Mhm.
sunk, and then there's also garbage from, like, that's new and blew into the landscape.
So this is basically stuff that has been blown by the wind there, or people are dumping garbage just in the middle of the desert.
Or
Because here
yeah.
in Hungary we had, I think we still have, but maybe not so much than a few years ago. Like people would dumping just garbage in forests illegally. Like they didn't want to pay or they didn't want to go to the big garbage dump and just put it somewhere in the forest. I think now they are actually the case is a bit better because now it's against the law and they are fined if I'm not mistaken. But it used to be, and it's still a big problem. Like on the roadside, a lot of garbage. So, or when we're talking about places like this, so is it like the wind blows it over, or people are, I don't know, going through it and just throwing stuff out the window of the car?
I think it's
What
a
do you
little of
think?
everything. We definitely found, like, some sites that you could tell was just dumped,
Mm,
like someone had a campfire and just left their garbage, an entire pizza box and plates and everything, or even a whole bag of garbage that they collected but then just left it there. Um, I think also part of it is just like the nature of the desert, like the winds can be pretty strong here. So
mhm,
I think even a lot of garbage that is intended to get thrown away, if it catches the wrong breeze or it isn't, in a closed garbage can, it can very easily blow away. That's my partner taking a bag back up.
mm,
um, yeah, and it kind of hides, like a lot of it is like in crevices and cracks where,
yeah, it's really
the
wild.
ground has dried out. A lot of it kind of hides, and then also in the sagebrush, a lot of stuff gets stuck there.
Mhm.
So, it's a little of everything. But there is, when you do this so often, you do notice that there's like a lot less care given by like general populations about garbage than there should be.
But the environment is stunning still. I'm,
Yeah, it
I'm
really is.
focusing
It's
on that.
beautiful out there. I
Yeah.
love it.
Hey. I, I really like that. I think the last year or so, or maybe even before that, that I've seen many blogs and posts about people just uh, picking up garbage wherever they found, so making it a thing. Like, okay, we are just a couple of our friends. We went out and picked up garbage by the river or by the forest or wherever. So I hope this trend
Mhm.
continues.
Me too. I think it's important to, care for the
Mm.
land that we live on.
Yeah, and also it just looks nice. It's like, of course, it's bad for the environment, but it also looks really bad. So if you want to enjoy nature, you should be able to enjoy it like in an original state, not with bags of garbage.
Mhm. Yeah, we were even kind of talking about how the garbage almost kind of seems to become a part of the landscape. Like we were jokingly calling like the water bottles we would find like a desert jellyfish, or you think you see a cool flower, but it's like a sandwich wrapper or something stuck in a bush. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, yeah, I hope that more people choose to pick up stuff where they go. But
Let's hope. Okay, moving on. We are going back to the
back in
studio,
the
or is it in the cast? Like it's a metal working.
metalworking.
Yeah,
Yeah. That's at the metal shop where I work.
the metal shop. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it is, my studio work does seem to be kind of, between my space at home and then, the shops where I work in, like, where I teach, I
Hmm.
end up doing a lot of my work there.
What
So
what are-
this
what are we seeing here? Couldn't
this
see.
is a component that, I did finish that component, but it's gonna attach to something else,
Hmm.
and it's actually made out of a lot of garbage, um, but also some other like wax castings. The kind of more intentionally collecting garbage just kind of started by just an extension of me collecting a lot of found objects and kind of thinking about these like little fragments of human existence, and just kind of putting them together and into new forms, new life to discarded things or things that we don't really think twice about, even just like random collected items. Yeah, so there's a lot of stuff going on in that piece.
Yeah,
The
but it's a
center part,
composition of different objects. Am I right? Or
yeah,
so it's not
yeah,
one thing. It's several things put together.
correct, correct. The piece in the center is kind of what I started with as
Hmm.
like the kind of the first part to that piece, and it's a mandarin orange I cast into a candle and then burned it. And I've been using kind of like objects turned into candles and then casting like the moment of like their like burning or melting down, as kind of like a nod to like how photographic casting can be, like how you can just like capture this moment in time through objects or the life of objects. And there's also an old kazoo in there. Um, and that's kind of also going with the theme of, like we talked a little last time, with kind of like bells,
Hmm.
uh, horns, noisemakers, space, like kind of thinking about like sound or instruments as like this, like a tool for claiming space or
Hmm.
announcing. So,
Yeah, I really like because there's for me. What's interesting is that there's a big, I don't know, not gap, just a position between this like ephemeral thing, like a candle blown out, or a noise, like that would be complete opposite of a metal object or something cast in metal. So you I never really thought about like how casting can basically also record a moment in time. Like that moment of the casting is like now that is forever. So it's not almost like a photograph. So it's really interesting. I
mhm.
think we have a video also.
Yeah.
I think
I'm
maybe
so bad at taking videos of me working, so the blog was a good excuse to do that.
yeah, a lot of protective gear. Uh, I can see.
Yeah.
So now basically what you're doing here is the I don't know the English word for it. So basically, taking out the little things that
Can I
is
ask you
there.
can
Yeah,
I ask you what the Hungarian word for it is?
Choria.
Ooh, that sounds cool.
Yeah.
Um, I guess we call it like, that would just be like the metal finishing. Sometimes it's
Hmm,
called
hmm.
chasing.
Oh, yeah. I've heard that.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Great.
So yeah, it's basically like cleaning up the scars of the process.
Hmm,
Sometimes the refractory mold can crack and metal can go into those cracks.
hmm,
And conceptually, I'm really interested in those, but they don't always work like
hmm.
compositionally. Um, but also part of the craft of working in metal, is to make it look really nice in the end. So I like yeah, like I kind of like both sides of that. Like I really like leaving
So we're
scars and
talking about
evidence.
like these
Mhm.
things.
Yeah. Yeah, we call that flashing when it's
Yeah.
like a crack that fills and it's like an extra little
Hmm.
um piece kind of sticking off
Yeah.
the main form.
So it's basically like there's also a choice when arranging this cast, but then again, you mold the finished piece by deciding what to take away from that and what to keep, how to make it. So it's another step in the process of creating the finished work.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, and yeah, I do. I like the idea of leaving that evidence of the
Hmm,
process
hmm,
because it's so mysterious to people who don't work with that. But yeah, I mean, I also like the idea of the fact that it's made from like garbage and really mundane objects, and then like putting that care into like polishing it. Um, is kind of like another form of putting time
hmm.
or extra thought into such things.
So what do you with your process? What do you think? So I'm trying to find the words here again. So when you take these away, or when you clean, so-called clean the work up, is it to so do you leave it on when it looks like, I don't know, part of the composition, or do you have to take this away to make sure that you can actually see the object, because it can, deform the actual shapes that you want to be identified. I'm not sure if
Yeah, yeah.
understandable.
Good question because I do it both ways sometimes.
Hmm,
I think a lot of times I'm always really interested in leaving it, but more often than not, I end up cleaning it up because um, it's not something you can control,
hmm,
which is also interesting, but yeah, like if it just looks like it wasn't cleaned up,
hmm.
then,
Yeah, so it
it's
has
just
to
kind
look,
of
when you leave it, it has to look intentional.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, at least for me, I think it should. I'm very open to, uh experimenting with
Hmm, hmm.
leaving, like flashing, even like gates and sprues. Um, but it just kind of depends like per piece if I think it works or if it's distracting.
Okay, here we have.
Yeah,
Oh, it's a very nice. Is it your studio, or is it still the metal? It's your studio.
that's my home studio where I do
Yeah.
most of the wax work.
Yeah.
That's where I'm sitting right now.
Very nice. So we
I
have a
cleaned
bit
up.
of real background
Yeah.
photos, but it's nice. It's always nice to see a nicely messy studio. It has to be messy a bit.
But yeah, that was right in the thick of it too. I felt
Mm.
like it just showed, kind of perfectly how many different little things I end up using, even if, like, not every little thing ends up in, a project, it's all there. Yeah, that's
Okay,
actually
this
I
is a
just
very
lost that.
interesting. Yeah.
I'm really excited about that piece. It looks a little different, or it went a little further before I ended up casting it in metal. But yeah, the urn, that's an urn
Mm-hmm.
shape. another nod to casting traditions. A lot of death memorials are um, rendered in a cast metal, often bronze, even though I use aluminum. But yeah, so just kind of thinking like going back to like archaeological interests and that kind of thing. I wanted to kind of play with the idea of the urn or the vessel, but like that it's not working the way it should, like having something kind of emerge from the side of it, maybe kind of like almost kind of like a hidden archaeology in a way. Like I feel like a lot of bias goes into the way the past is interpreted, and especially when you're thinking about like gender, queerness, and there have been a lot of really interesting takes on that in a way that like we can't really define gender thousands of years ago by our standards of gender, for example. So yeah, kind of working with this like narrative of archaeology and interpretations of the past, but also kind of like looking towards the future, and again kind of using like the horn and bell shapes as this like announcing kind of reference or noisemaker or space taker. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, and so like I had this like old plastic trumpet that I found, and that's what I kind of cut up to be in the front part of that. And in that, it's kind of hard to tell from the picture, but I'm really looking forward to seeing the metal. We cast it last week, but because I've been a little sick, I haven't opened it up yet. But there's a lot of, yeah, there it is. A lot of, that's kind of a
Is it
closer
the
up
end?
view.
The closer up of this
Yes,
end? Yes. And
yes.
is the urn something that you found or you made just
I
for
actually did
this?
sculpt that.
This cup.
Yeah. Um, yeah, so there is actually a lot of garbage in there, but then there's
Mm-hmm.
also like some pieces of uh, non-native species that have been planted
Mm-hmm.
here. Yeah, kind of like these palm fronds that I cut into like arrows. There's some 3D printed forms. I've been kind of interested in incorporating more 3D printing into my cast work because it kind of, to me, represents like another era of casting or replicating.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, I understand. It's basically it's not the same, but it's the continuation of that technique basically, and you know, merging it with digital technology. So you have a 3D printer available that you can use
mhm,
for these.
mhm. Yeah,
Nice.
that's what's good about teaching art. I have access to a lot of stuff.
Hmm. But yeah, it's really interesting. I love like it also like if I remember correctly, there were a lot of like older instruments that had these long, like basically
Mhm.
tubes. So they were not just the shapes that we are familiar with today, but they were like a bit more round or so that's why I'm associating with this like these more traditional instrument types.
That's really interesting. I didn't even think about that. I was kind of thinking of it as like it's kind of taking on its own life or becoming liquid itself or
Yeah,
movement itself.
yeah.
But yeah, that makes me want to look up like really old pictures of instruments and
Maybe
kind of walk.
I will try to find some examples that I'm thinking of, and then I can send it to you later.
Yeah.
Okay, and go on to the next. Hey, oh, I think we have these in bigger, or maybe it's bet we can see it better. So these are again pieces that you. Oh, I'll let you talk about it.
Yeah, so in this picture, it's just showing some molds I made, and I
Mm-hmm.
made the molds out of garbage, like paper towel rolls and that kind of thing. And I just kind of like busted out a bunch of them really quickly. Um, and they're pretty small. And the intent was to cast fingers
Hmm.
of people. And that was actually what I originally wanted to do when I submitted the proposal for this residency a couple years ago. Was to kind of like thinking of the fingers as like this, like literally an index finger
Hmm.
is
Hmm.
like this indicator of like direction, but also just like a reference to human actions, human presence, but also kind of by putting a bunch together, thinking about how that could like memorialize a gathering. Yeah, just around campus because I'm usually around campus and a lot of folks there. I had a lot of my students and some other folks cast their fingers for me using this mold, and the pink material is an alginate mold that's based on algae, and that's pretty common for life casting. And it's just like a one single time, single use mold material.
Hmm. Yeah,
Um,
I was thinking it doesn't look like wax. And I guess
no,
wax would be a
yeah,
bit too hot to
right, right. I did
cast
pour wax
fingers.
into those. So like after they
Oh,
cast their fingers,
you put,
then I could
then
pour wax.
then you have the wax. Yeah.
Yeah. And I probably the next picture, yeah, is the those are all the wax castings that I
Hmm.
collected from that round at least. I have several rounds of these. So, I kind of I started by asking everyone to do fingers crossed
Hmm.
because, uh, at least in America, I'm not sure if it's the same everywhere, but that's kind of a symbol of like it means good luck or um, and good luck, but in a way, I was kind of interpreting that as like hope for the future. Just a very simple gesture that could also kind of symbolize hope, which therefore kind of defines like the future. When you talk about hope, it's you're talking about the
Hmm.
future. Um, so I told them they could do that or anything they wanted that kind of reminded them of that. A lot of them did thumbs up, so that's why I have a lot of single thumbs. um, but yeah, I didn't want to give anyone like too many rules because it's all about like,
Hmm.
individuals and how they come together and that there's no wrong way of doing that. Um,
Do you plan to use these as one installation?
Actually, I've already started
Separate.
using them, just kind of dispersing them in many different things.
Oh, so as part of other works. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, just kind of hiding them in with like the garbage and the other
Mm-hmm.
forms. There were some in the piece we were looking at previously
Hmm.
too.
Yeah, that sounds. I don't know. We for sure have the thumbs up. I'm not sure about the fingers. I know about like the saying, and sometimes I think we only see it in movies. I don't think that we do that here. At least not in Hungary. This fingers crossed thing. And
Mhm.
I always seen it when like somebody promises something and then hides the fingers crossed somewhere so it doesn't
Yeah,
mean.
that's true. Yeah, yeah, we have that too. Yeah, and a lot of times we'll just say like fingers crossed if you say
Yeah,
something you
yeah.
want to happen, then you say fingers crossed.
I think the expression we have is batch soul, which means like it's the word of my honor or honored word, something like that.
Yeah. Mhm.
So there's no fingers crossed. I don't think so. But maybe if anyone is listening, and please prove me right if or please prove me wrong if I'm mistaken. Okay.
That's really interesting though that like, there's just like so many different gestures we can do with just a hand,
Hmm.
or even just like the digits on a hand. Um,
I think
yeah.
it's another.
Yeah, that's actually a friend of mine. So
Hmm.
this blog post was visiting other people's art
Hmm.
that was made out in the desert, and I wanted to share that just because I can't be there to kind of bring you a piece of the desert. And this event happened, oops, sorry, a couple of weeks ago, um, and it's called the Bullfrog Biennial, and it's really close to a ghost town that was actually an abandoned mining town, and the whole district was part of like, gold rush colonialism out west in the American West. In Nevada, it was more in the early 1900s,
Hmm.
but the gold rush in California, was more mid 1800s. But yeah, so they have every 2 years an art show at the open air museum that's out there. And this piece was called Arterial. And I had kind of consulted a little bit with them in the shops of like how to build it. But on the top, it's kind of hard to tell from that picture. On the top, those three forms on the top
Hmm.
are wind harps. And so they're just like kind of like a wooden box with some strings attached to them, but they're designed in a way that when the wind crosses them, they kind of make this like eerie kind of singing noise. And I just thought it was a really beautiful reflection of the desert and the elements out
Hmm.
there. And it's right at the edge of this valley. So when you're standing at the piece, you can kind of see out over the valley and all the mountains around it.
Hmm.
A lot of the mountains have evidence of mining, um,
Just
literally blown blown in half, kind of, or restructured
mhm.
kind of mountains from the mining
I, I,
damage.
I love how the color is basically so different from everything else in the surrounding,
Mhm.
but it's still you can see through it. So
Mhm.
it's in the environment, but also really stands out from the environment. And
Mhm.
yeah, those wind harps and those kind of instruments are always interesting. Like how when you make sound, not by actually making sound, but creating something that nature can play on. We- We're talking about that.
Mhm. Yeah, it was really a really nice piece. The artist on the left is from Germany, and
Hmm.
the artist on the right is from California. And so they were kind of talking about like this, how the desert seems to be a meeting place. A lot of people like migrate through it, um, and yeah, it was really lovely.
I think we should mention their names. If I read it right, it's
Oh,
Tiffany Lynn and Saskia Kraft, the two
yes.
artists. Let me see in a picture.
Yes.
And if you're interested in their works, you can find their names also in the blog post. And I encourage everyone who attends this little talk or sees it later to also check out the blog posts that Emily made, because they are really captivating, and you can see a bit more in writing later. Okay, I really love this installation.
Yeah, and it's funny because 'cause I'm kind of familiar with the area, and I've seen this obliterated mobile home before, and I
Hmm.
just thought it was really clever of this artist to, build these plywood forms. The artist was, Giovanni Aranda, I believe,
Hmm.
who I'm not familiar, I have not met him, but, I just thought this piece was kind of perfect, and also kinda reminded me of, like, we've been having a lot of, extra bad fire seasons out west, especially in California, Utah, like all out west, really. But a lot of it is because of human interaction, um, altering the landscape in a way that like the native plants aren't really thriving anymore. It's a lot of invasive or introduced non-native plants that catch fire much quicker in a drier area. Um, but yeah, so like you could walk right up to this piece. You can even see like the old steering wheel, the old sink, all the parts from inside this trailer. Um, and I thought the fire forms almost kind of look like emoji in a way, like how you put an emoji on top of an image on Instagram, for example.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, that's what I like. So I was wondering if the trailer, the destroyed trailer, or the garbage basically was already there, or if it was an installation. It looks like it was already there, so it's really nice, this interaction. And for me, like it's almost like cartoony, and yeah, for me I was reminded of like experimental, like when cartoons are overlaid on film. I
mhm.
think it's or rotoscoped sometimes into, I don't know, like. not sure if I can remember an actual example of that, but sometimes you would see that in cartoons, these types of little flames, almost like an animated something. And also, I really love this interaction between, like, we use Photoshop so many times, and it's basically a Photoshop in real life.
Totally, yeah.
Mm.
Yeah,
So
and the
it's
mountain
great.
right behind it has a lot of evidence of mining, old mine
Mm.
shafts. Um, so yeah, I thought that that was a great way to activate that particular space.
Mm. Yeah, I really like it. And also, it's always a really interesting, I don't know, experience to see, like, two-dimensional, or things that look basically two-dimensional but in a 3D space,
Hmm.
where basically you can walk around, but you also have these little, views that the artist constructed for you, that, okay, if you look it from this particular angle, it's you will see the complete picture, because I'm not sure, but it looks like that there are views that you have to find to actually have the picture, because of the 2D nature of these flames. So from the side, it's not the same, I guess.
Yeah, so this was nearby when since it was
Uh-huh.
like an all day long event. We were kind of exploring the area, and even though I'd been out there a lot, I had never seen this particular can river.
Hmm.
Um, which I think we even kind of mentioned in the last talk we were talking about, or one of the talks. Um,
Yes.
yeah, so this is actually like archaeological, I guess, trash from miners, settlers. Um, a lot of it is, yeah, just like really old, but because of the landscape, it kind of all sinks into these crevices and then actually kind of takes on these geologic proportions of like
Hmm.
a river or, um, yeah, just like this like kind of crevice of rusted trash. And
Interesting.
the materiality is really interesting too, because like a lot of stuff I've been doing in my studio is kind of based on plastics, but this is all like metal, glass, ceramic, like stuff that lasts a really long time,
Mm.
just like plastic would now. But this was kind of like garbage before the plastic era. And it's just kind of fascinating. I mean, it's I looking through these pictures, I was almost kind of thinking that none of these pictures really did it justice. You can kind of see how it winds back into the background
Hmm.
in a couple of them. But yeah,
So it's really long. So
yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
I was For me, I was thinking about, like, yeah, it also looks historic, like it looks a bit more important because it's older. But basically, if you think about it, a lot of stuff that we find in archaeology is basically trash. Even from
Hmm.
ancient times, we basically find the broken pottery and toys. So
Tools, pottery,
tools,
dishes. Yeah.
potteries, dishes that were thrown out. So basically, the trash dumps are one of the richest grounds that you can find in archaeology. If you find a trash heap, an ancient trash heap, that's a treasure trove for finds. So it's interesting to think about that. That, yeah, trash garbage is really bad and it's bad for the environment, but also we found them throughout history all of the time, and it's basically now it becomes treasure and it's shown in museums.
Hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah,
But
this will
yeah,
be a great find in a few thousand years.
yeah, fascinating.
This piece was so beautiful.
Hmm.
Ancestral Totem by Antoine Lee. And again, I did not get to meet the artist. And this was installed as a bit more of a permanent piece, I believe, before the biennial, and I'm pretty sure it'll stay there.
Hmm.
But they even worked with an astronomer to line up the cradle of that piece so that it would line up with the sunset on the day of the biennial. And
That's
they did
very
a
nice.
ceremony, yeah, honoring the ancestors. And Yeah, so and then like the stones on the ground aligned with north, south, east, and west, and they lit torches at night and sprinkled cornmeal around the rocks as food for the ancestors, and yeah, allowed us to make offerings to our ancestors as well. For me, it had kind of a personal, or I just had kind of this like really beautiful moment because a lot of research I'd done for a previous
We have
piece.
another picture here.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
was with the sunset. Yeah, beautiful desert sunset there.
Hmm.
And actually, looking out that direction, that's Death Valley on the other side of
Hmm.
those mountains. If anyone's heard of Death Valley, um, but yeah, so like a piece I'd done a couple years ago, which we talked about in the last one about the memorial for queer rhyolite. This is right next to the site where in the 1980s a group of queer people tried to establish like a safe
Hmm.
haven
Hmm.
for people who were not welcome in society because they were gay, and that was also kind of heightened by AIDS hysteria. So for me, I felt like I just felt like it was just kind of a really beautiful chance to think about them and honor them and hope that they're happy with,
Hmm.
how well, yeah.
Yeah, and because of the closeness of that site, an extra layer of meaning too. Yeah,
Mhm.
nice. It's a very nice piece.
This was
Also, I think we
intended.
should do more. Also, with modern architecture, we should do more with astrology, like what we used to do. Like it's always so cool when they align the windows or the between the pieces that it's aligned with the stars or the moon or the sun. We can do that now. We have computers, so
Mhm.
let's use it in modern architecture also. It would be cool to have live in a house where on your birthday the sun will shine through this window. We
Oh,
could, we could do that.
wow. Yeah, that would be amazing.
Yeah,
And so much more personal. Like,
so much more personal. Yeah, or just
yeah.
or just have, I don't know, a sun clock in the square somewhere. I don't know. Because it was
I
so.
also just really,
It's always so
sorry.
cool.
Yeah. Yeah, and I just think like like the West suffers from like a lot of like colonial
Mm,
actions, and this was just like a way to call attention to
mhm,
indigenous ancestors that have maintained that land for so long.
mhm.
And then, seeing that after like the pile of mining trash that's
Yeah, that's.
only 100 years old, but still looks really old and has left its mark.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah,
yeah, it's a really powerful piece. I'm really happy it's going to be a permanent piece there too.
yeah, nice. On, and
From
we are
sunset to fire.
and we are back in the
In the
in the
foundry. Yeah,
foundry. Uh,
that's me lighting the furnace.
mhm,
This was at our event last week. So
mhm.
we did an event. We called it Illuminati, where
I really
me
love
and
that title.
thank you. Yeah, a student I had a couple years ago came up with that title.
I'm a
Um,
sucker for puns, so.
yeah. Yeah, and like a lot, like through my work and the way that I teach
Mhm,
Foundry, I think it's really important to kind of question these like notions of like power, patriarchy that are wrapped up in the Foundry. And so we kind of did this event that was like very experimental. I had the students do a project where they were like actually instructed to break the rules as long as it was done
mhm,
safely, but to break the rules of like the whole craft just to see what happened. And some of the pieces kind of failed, but some of them were actually made really amazing things you would never expect.
mhm,
There's me putting metal, so we're actually burning scrap metal too, so that's kind of another reference to garbage.
mhm,
So we melted down a whole lot of scrap metal, kind of leftovers from Las Vegas, as I like to call it, because a lot of entertainment and conventions and that kind of thing happen here. And so a lot gets built and
mhm.
then taken down and thrown away kind of
So
regularly.
it's an
So,
outdoor space, if I see it
yeah, yeah.
correctly. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, the foundry portion is outdoor. It's connected to the indoor metal shop.
Hmm. Very nice. Also, it has. We were talking about the ancestors with the last piece. It also has like this ancient feel to it. Like
Yeah.
fire always makes people think. Like it awakes something in everyone, even a
Mhm.
campfire.
Yeah, we had a lot of people show up too, and everyone really loved it. We gave the audience, the public, a chance to make little tiles, so they each
Hmm.
made
Hmm.
a little piece that we cast for them.
We can see the
Yeah,
audience
yeah. So
there.
you can see how many people in the
Hmm.
background kind of showed up while we were pouring metal. Those molds were the experimental ones. So again,
Hmm.
like some of them came out kind of. I still haven't seen some of them,
Hmm.
um, but yeah, just to kind of like they're learning the craft and they're making really beautiful works. And we focus on craftspersonship to make sure they know how to make something look really nice. So this was kind of like balancing that with like let's do something stupid, let's do
Yeah.
something breaking the rules, to see what happens and to see what other possibilities the foundry can offer us, that you wouldn't normally discover if you follow the rules.
That's cool.
Yeah. And that's casting some of my works for this residency. Those are some of my molds, the big white ones
The
there.
big white ones.
So yeah, it went all night. It was really tiring. We had been planning this trip.
I was asking because we see that it was daylight and now it's night. So how long was the whole event?
It it went from 5 to 9,
Mm.
but it seemed it lasted a couple weeks before that, and it's
Yeah.
a
Uh,
couple days after
uh,
because of all the prep work and then the cleanup and everything.
yeah.
But
It,
yeah.
it looks like a lot of preparation, a lot of cleanup after that.
Yeah, but it was fun and the students really loved it. My students are a diverse group of
Hmm.
women and queer people and it was just really empowering for them to coordinate and perform this event
Hmm.
and the public really loved it. We even did like fortune telling, we had music playing, we had uh
Cool.
the whole theme was how to disrupt the foundry and
Hmm.
do it differently, less exclusive, and to share.
So did you do all the preparation and the cleanup stuff with together with your students?
Yeah,
Yeah. So it was also a nice community experience, I guess.
yeah. I think they got to see what goes into something like this.
Yeah, we're back to really,
So
really,
yeah.
really nice pictures. As much
Mhm.
you're sorry that you couldn't be here and experience. Like I said, I'm really, really sorry that I couldn't be there and experience this event with you because it looks like a lot of fun and it's really interesting. Also, like
Well, if you ever come here, we'll pour metal.
okay, okay, sounds nice. Maybe I will take up your offer, but
Fingers crossed.
unfortunately not in the near future.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for the talk. I mean, it was really nice to catch up with you, and I believe you will continue with the blogs in the
I'd like to,
future.
yes. Yeah, we
And
talked about that. I'd like to.
yeah, so I will encourage everyone to visit the blogs, read the already uh, created blog posts, and look out for more from Emily. And then we will also have an exhibition event in a later date that we are still in the planning phase of. But I'm sure there will be something online with the exhibition also, and it will be really exciting too. So thank you for this talk, and thank you everyone for joining us and watching this little conversation with Emily, and hopefully we will see you next time as well. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you.